Good afternoon and welcome to the Fit for the Future Community Engagement webinar. My name is Joanne Petrovic and I'm the founder of Polyvote. Just a little bit of background about myself. I qualified as a social worker and psychologist around 15 years ago, and I'm currently completing a graduate diploma in business, majoring in social enterprise. I've worked for around 15 years consulting with communities, and I've consulted with many different communities: Aboriginal, multicultural communities, youth, aged communities, people with a disability, women, and a large variety of rural and within city areas. I've also consulted at all levels of government and in community groups, but the majority of my work has been working with local councils and consulting with communities, especially on the community strategic plan and on reviews of council assets and facilities. The reason that I'm presenting today is on behalf of Polyvote, which is a company that I'm the founder and CEO of. Polyvote is a social enterprise established to promote community engagement through online methods, and Polyvote also develops online programs to encourage online engagement. Community engagement is required in all of the Fit for the Future council processes, but it's a little trickier than that, because although community engagement is required for all councils, different councils are required to do different types of consultations in different ways. And the purpose of this presentation is to outline that in more detail. So today I'm going to cover the community engagement ideas in the background Fit for the Future documents. And this gives you a fairly good idea of exactly what is meant in the templates, which you're probably familiar with. I'll also take you briefly through the different options available to councils in response to Fit for the Future and how they will relate to specific community engagement options. And finally, I'll go into the specific community consultations that are required for each council option. So we'll start with the background of the Fit for the Future process. This really started with the Revitalising Local Government report that was developed by the Independent Local Government Review Panel in October 2013. And this report broke councils down into a number of different groups. It also outlined a whole lot of issues, including community engagement issues. And from that breakdown in the local government groups, there were some recommendations towards each local council area. So the main recommendations that were made were mergers or amalgamations, council improvement proposals, which is really about an existing council improving the way that it managed its services, rural council proposals, which is only for a few councils. I'll go into that later. The Western councils were excluded from many of the recommendations in this report and will be undertaking a separate process. And it's also worth mentioning at this point that there will be some trial joint organisations. I'll go into those in more details later on. So the major community engagement themes in the Revitalising Local Government report are the community perceptions of council and the way that that drove the outcomes and plans of the report, the concept of community engagement and its place in the negative infrastructure cycle, which I'll explain in more detail. The Revitalising Local Government report had a real emphasis on communities having the final say about what should happen to their local governments. And there's also themes on leadership as consultation and diversity and representation. So we'll start with community perceptions of councils. Basically, the Revitalising Local Government report did some fairly significant surveys of the people in the local council areas, especially around Sydney and the Hunter region. And what they found from surveying those communities was that the communities felt that the worst thing about their local councils was the lack of consultation, and they were more concerned about council's lack of consultation than they were about the way that council provided services and infrastructure, which is often not what is expected. Also, I guess the results of that survey found that generally communities don't support councils amalgamating. However, they can be persuaded under certain circumstances, which I'll also go into in more detail later in the presentation. So let's go into the negative infrastructure cycle that I mentioned before. The Revitalising Local Government report spent quite a bit of time talking about the issues around the infrastructure cycle. And basically the way this cycle goes is that councils have no money or resources for needed infrastructure, and the mistake that they make at that point is that they don't consult with their communities about their limited money and resources for that needed infrastructure. As a result of not doing good consultation with their communities, there's not really a solution found to the problem that is facing the councils. And there's a number of solutions that are commented on in this report and also Fit for the Future reports. Some of the major ones are agreed changes to service levels, rate increases, discharging of assets on the agreement of the community, a community management model where community groups take over certain infrastructure and service delivery of councils, and there are also innovative solutions that are mentioned. The primary one was, for example, the use of technology in customer service, but there were many others in that group. Because in this cycle, councils get involved in this negative infrastructure cycle and don't consult with their communities, they then don't find a solution to the problem that they're facing with no money for the needed infrastructure and services. And as a result, that infrastructure deteriorates further, and at the same time community expectations increase. So that's, I guess, a brief summary of the negative infrastructure cycle. The next theme, I guess, that I wanted to speak about from the Revitalising Local Government report was the concept of communities having the final say. So this report was spent quite a bit of time talking about double devolution, and from that, basically the recommendation is that the state should give more power to local government, and in return local government should give more power to the people. And this extends in this report even to the concept of the state government not having the final say over local councils, whether or not they amalgamate or whether or not they don't. And the report is quite critical of the fact that at the moment the Minister for Local Government has this final say, and it's quite clear that this say should be in the hands of the community. The other major themes in the Revitalising Local Government report is that leadership is consultation, and it mentions the significant duties of mayors, councillors and GMs, and they're the major people that are mentioned in this report to consult with communities. The report also recommended that there should be regular, and they sort of pointed out the idea of 4 yearly, which happens in South Australia, voter referendums, and these referendums should determine the makeup of the council, so how many councillors there are and how that might be structured, and also determine whether or not there should be a popularly elected mayor. The other major idea that came through in the leadership as consultation was the idea that in larger and potentially amalgamated councils, that representation and leadership from the community could come from a new group of people sort of represented as community boards. These community boards are possibly a little like the Section 355 committees, but they are potentially elected to their roles, and they might oversee either specific assets like a swimming pool or specific localities like a isolated town within the local government area. The other major theme in this report around community engagement is the need for diversity in representation, and specifically there's a mention of the need to recruit more diverse councillors, women, youth, etc. And in the report section on the Western councils, there was a highlighted issue of the need to engage far more with Aboriginal communities. The New South Wales government then did a response to the called Fit for the Future to this report on revitalising local government, and it created 3 fairly short response documents, and also created the templates for councils to complete to demonstrate that they're becoming fit for the future. So these are the 3 very short documents in response that the state government wrote. The first one's called A Blueprint for the Future of Local Government. The second one is called A Roadmap for Stronger, Smarter Councils, and the third one is called A Roadmap for Intergovernmental Collaboration in New South Wales. And I'll just look briefly at each of those reports and what they had to say about community engagement. So the first report is The Blueprint for the Future. of local government, and in this one the major community engagement themes was that councils must discuss planned council changes, including mergers or amalgamations, with their community and also with neighbouring local government areas. And also the second theme in this report was that idea of councils having increased accountability to their local community. The second report, called A Roadmap for Stronger, Smarter Councils, outlines in a bit more detail the negative infrastructure cycle that we've looked at before, and it also presents a commitment of the New South Wales Government to assist community engagement through access to experts and funding in the Fit for the Future process. The final response from the state government was really about joint organisations, and this doesn't specify very much about community engagement in the future, and it assumes community engagement in the past. So joint organisations are trial projects that are focused on getting councils to work together to meet identified community needs across a region, and those community needs are identified in existing community strategic plans. And the focus of this report is very much on inter-council collaboration, not on local, state and federal collaboration, or on councils' collaboration with non-government organisations or business. Council, as I mentioned before, has some opportunities to respond, or is required to respond in Fit for the Future process, and the responses that they need to give are based on some templates, 3 specifically. So for those councils that have been recommended to merge, they've been requested to complete template 1 and get that in by the end of the financial year. Councils who are not recommended to merge but instead recommended to develop an improvement proposal are required to complete template 2, and rural councils are required to complete template 3. Now, joint organisations and Western councils may not have to complete templates at this stage. Certainly the Western councils do not have to complete templates at this stage. In each template, the same benchmarks are set for assets and financial situations of a council, and the benchmarks that have been set are that the operating performance ratio should be greater than or break even average over the last 3 years. For the own source of revenue ratio, it should be greater than 60% of revenue should come from the council, averaged over 3 years. For building and infrastructure asset renewal ratio, greater than 100% should be renewed over a 3-year time frame, and there should be less than 2% of an infrastructure backlog ratio. Asset maintenance ratio should be greater than 100% over 3 years, and the debt service ratio should be greater than 0 and less than 20% average over 3 years. Real operating expenditure should show a decrease in real operating expenditure per capita over time. I think you'll agree when you look at this that this is very challenging for many councils to meet, and it is from these benchmarks that community engagement processes flow out. So the first community engagement processes are for those councils that are required to merge, and they need to consult with communities before the submission of the template in June 2015, and at least 28 days of that time must allow for the public exhibition of their final proposal to merge. Councils must involve the community in the merge proposal, and they should be discussing the pros and cons of a merger with their community, and they should be focusing on the pros. So basically what this means is that councils that have been recommended to merge should be explaining to their communities why they are unable to meet those benchmarks and how a merger would assist in meeting those benchmarks. Councils in the merger category are also required to consult with their staff. Now, how they do this, they're given an option of whether or not they want to create a communication plan to discuss that merger, and they also have recommended to them brochures, websites, social media, public meetings and surveys and polls as some of the methods for consultation. It's probably worth noting that for these councils, they'll also have to report on how the community responded to the proposed merger and the amalgamation. So there's sections in this template that require mergers. For those councils that are facing a recommendation of improvement requirements, they need to consult with their communities about how they are going to go about actually reducing some of their services or undertaking other actions in order to meet the benchmarks that have been set by Fit for the Future. The consultation that they're required to do starts immediately and is ongoing, and a consultation plan, probably between 3 and 5 years, should probably be developed to address proposed changes to the CSP, like the Community Strategic Plan, to meet benchmarks. And what this means is that in the Community Strategic Plan there's probably a lot of ideas and plans that the council is going to be unable to meet if it's also going to meet its benchmarks, and so negotiations will have to take place with the community and consultation and discussions. So councils may choose to discuss with the community and staff changes to service level, asset management and infrastructure backlog. So they won't have to discuss that with the community if their proposed changes are not going to affect the delivery of the Community Strategic Plan. But if their proposed changes will affect the delivery of the Community Strategic Plan, they will be required to consult with their community. And a panel of technical experts can be hired from the Department of Local Government to assist with the consultation plan, and specific methods of consultation have not been identified for this group, basically because there could be so many different things consulted on and so many different ways that the community could be consulted. So that's why a panel of experts would be assisting to develop a consultation plan. Please note that if the Revitalising Local Government report recommended that your council merge and you've decided to go ahead and complete the improvement requirements template, you're also going to have to justify in one of the questions that the community and or the other councils did not want to amalgamate. So effectively you're going to have to do all the consultation in template 1, demonstrate that the community was not supportive of mergers, and then go on and complete the consultation in template 2. Some of the options to reduce council costs that could be consulted on in template 2 include changing service levels, rate increases, discharge of assets, community management of areas of assets, and other innovative solutions, for example technology. And in the template 3 for rural councils, which is, there's only 11 councils listed in this category, they are required to consult with their community during the development of the plan, but there are no advertising times listed. And they are required to consult on specific options for rural councils and the potential impact on them with community and staff. And they also may need to consult on changes to service levels and infrastructure backlogs. Methods of consultation are not really laid out in the rural council proposal template either, and there are a number of options which I'll go into on the next page about the different consultations that could happen. Rural councils should only really be from Group C. If other councils decide that they would like to complete the rural council template, they're going to have to demonstrate a whole lot of additional criteria that they meet to demonstrate that they are what is defined as a rural council, and that's not only about their locality and about their size, but also about a number of other aspects that have been put together to define this category rural council. You can find out more of that information in either the template or going back to the Revitalising Local Government report. So the options for rural councils are resource sharing, shared administration, specialty services. So I'll take these in a bit more detail, sorry. Option 1, resource sharing. So this is where councils could potentially share resources across a number of councils, so they might utilise the same staff, for example, or the same expertise. Option 2 with shared administration is about sharing senior staff, general managers, directors, those types of roles. Option 3 is about specific councils providing specialty services, so one council might specialise in waste management and another in IT services or human resources. Option 4 is streamlined governance, which is really about these rural councils changing what they report to and how much reporting they do. And this option sort of goes with option 5, which is streamlined planning. So for example, local environmental plans may be written across a number of councils, and other documents that are sort of similar to that could be written across a number of councils. and also regulation and reporting documents could be written collectively from a number of councils. And the 6th option is the option of service review, to limit the number of services that these councils provide to their community. The Rural Council template also allows for rural councils to come up with other options that they believe and can demonstrate will make it possible for them to meet their benchmarks. There are a couple of questions that I've received so far about the Community Strategic Plan. One of them was really about the community boards and how they would be elected. A lot of that information isn't really clear. The way I read it, it looks a lot like a Section 355 committee with potentially some voting involved, but the documents at this point aren't overly clear on this issue. The other question that I've received a number of times is really about what happens if a council consults with their community and the community decides not to merge. Is the final say with the community or with the state government? And I guess the first point to raise here is that the final decision legally under the Local Government Act still sits with the Minister for Local Government. However, the Revitalising Local Government report is quite clear that it believes that the community should have the final say. So the question really comes down to politics. If the state government believes that the consultation has been broad and representative and has clearly outlined the pros and the cons, I think it's unlikely that they would go ahead and force a council merger. On the other hand, if they think the community engagement is somewhat potted and they are able to do their own consultation, asking questions that outline the pros of amalgamation and getting community support, the council will probably find that the Minister for Local Government exercises his or her right to continue on and force a merger or amalgamation. So in summary, the ideas from this are that communities in the Fit for the Future process should be getting a say over whether or not to merge, and communities should be engaged about the proposed changes to infrastructure and service delivery to become a sustainable council. And finally, community engagement will be ongoing for council. And to give you a quick summary quote, a Fit for the Future council is one that is sustainable, efficient, effectively manages infrastructure and delivers services for communities, and has the scale and capacity to engage effectively across communities, industries and government. And this quote is from the Fit for the Future roadmap for smarter councils. Next information session I plan to run, I plan to examine a bit more the Fit for the Future's recommended methods of consultation, which consultation methods or tools have the scale and capacity to reach the most people, which are the most cost efficient and sustainable, what can give you the best quality and effective information, and can they be run sustainably. Thank you for attending this webinar. Videos and handouts will be sent to you, and the next information session is planned next Thursday at the same time. Information about this session will be emailed to you shortly. I'll sign out with my usual sign out as the CEO of Polyvote, which is to encourage people to choose their future. Thank you once again.